Okay, welcome, yeah, welcome to our little office. Nice to see new faces in here. It's always nice to welcome new people in, and we do like to open our doors to the community here in Amsterdam from time to time, as frequently as we can, and share our ideas with people in our own backyard. I'm going to talk about Patagonia, and I think you're going to see quite some parallels between the story of this company and Creo's amazing story that you've just heard. But I'm going to start with a little personal anecdote you'll have to indulge me in. Last winter, myself and a group of cyclists, mates from here in Amsterdam, decided to ride our bikes from here, this office, to COP23 in Bonn. And it was in November. And it's 320 kilometres, so it takes quite some time, and it was raining most of the time. But you do have quite some time to talk. And one specific conversation that I was having with a guy who, until that point, I didn't know so well, and he asked me quite simply, why do you think right now there seems to be so much interest in Patagonia? And my response really wasn't, my instinct wasn't to talk about what we've been doing, in actual fact. My response was actually about hope. And in what feels like an increasingly stormy and chaotic world, people are looking for little anchors of hope. And they're finding them in new and interesting places, in small grassroots environmental groups, NGOs, people with loud voices, but also in brands, interestingly. And it's Patagonia, the activist company, that people seem to be increasingly gravitating towards. And that, I think, is the simple answer to the question. And the context for that is, and there will be some levity in here, but it's a little dark moment, is the environmental crisis. A crisis that is caused by the business that we do. In some sense, the massive overconsumption, of clothing. But I think people understand that, and certainly the cultural creators understand that, or as we call them, eco-progressives. But they understand that. They're no longer asking, is this thing happening? Tell me more about it. They're saying, what can I do? How can I take action? Yeah? And that desire to take action is pointing people towards the platforms that are offering them ways to take action with their money, and that's where brands come in. But Patagonia hasn't always been an activist company. In fact, in 1968, when our founder, Yvon Chouinard, made a trip with a few buddies from California down to Patagonia in Chile to climb this mountain, Mount Fitzroy. There wasn't really such a thing as environmental activism, and there certainly wasn't an idea that brands or business could participate in social change and positive environmental impact. But from going on that trip, the company was formed, and that trip, that skyline, in a very literal sense, created Patagonia. The Fitzroy skyline, the name of the company, what we make, high quality, technical outdoor gear for climbing and alpinism as it was then in its early days. And it was a short time after, in 1973, when YC, as we sometimes call him, and his mates started the company and started this process of discovery. And one of the first big discoveries that they made was making stuff is really damaging. And this was primarily brought to their attention because the first stuff that they were making was made out of cotton. And when Yvon and the guys went out into the cotton fields, what they immediately recognised is that people farming the cotton were wearing hazmat suits. They recognised it must be toxic. They did a little bit of digging. They realised lots of people were dying from terrible diseases from farming cotton. And this was the moment of realisation. This was the kind of aha moment that what he'd set out to do with positive intention was fundamentally damaging. And that just went against his values and who he was. And the journey began, and that journey really was an ongoing, and has been an ongoing process of self-inspection and course correction, what we refer to as cleaning up our own act. But cleaning up your own act when you have a complex business model and a really deep supply chain is a very hard thing to do, right? And so we don't refer to ourselves as a sustainable company. I don't think there is such a thing yet, in actual fact, as a company that has a net positive impact on the environment and society. But there is such a thing as a responsible company, and that is how we refer to ourselves. And the journey of responsibility that began in 1973 with the founding of the company stepped through a series of moments of course correction, yeah? Big pivots within the business that enabled us to address some of the questions, some of the challenges that we felt we needed to deal with. And up until about 2011, Patagonia was very, very steady, tick, 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 tick growth. The company's never been really focused on growth, privately owned, and really it remained being focused on making great stuff and reducing our impact, right? Having values, being an advocate for those values. But around 2011, a couple of things started to happen. One was, I think, an increasing sense of frustration from the company ownership that people just weren't hearing it, they just weren't getting it. And we started to do some more provocative things. One of those quite famous provocative things is an advertisement called "Don't Buy This Jacket." And I see a few heads nodding, and I'm not going to go into that too much. There's a little reference a little bit later in the presentation. But around this time, I think something more significant happened. And it was a shifting consumer landscape. It was a wider recognition of the pressing issues that are facing our planet and our societies and our communities. And the communities that we served, their needs were changing. And they were actually converging with our values that we'd held for a long time. And this moment of convergence was the really powerful moment in recent Patagonia history. But the question you have to ask yourself when you see that happening is, what do we do with it? What do we do about that recognition that more and more people are coming to us? Are we going to keep just telling them that we're cleaning up our own act and our supply chain is improving? Or are we going to take that opportunity to do something more significant? And for us, that became about the recognition that we had an opportunity to build a movement around the brand, and a movement that had to be built on action, and the opportunity to create an action-based movement with our customer community in order to have a greater impact versus our values. And the lens through which we kind of navigate that opportunity to build a global movement of like-minded people in defense of the planet is our mission statement. It was actually written in 1991, so quite some time ago, but it continues to be the single tool that we use every single day in every aspect of our business. And if we can't square off an idea or an initiative or a new product or a marketing concept with this, then it doesn't happen. But it's also a really powerful tool for alignment. It really sharpens up decision making. You know, it gets you to that full stop much more quickly and much more effectively. And the outcome of that is, because we all know what this thing is and what it means, the ability and the confidence to be quick, to be bold, to take risks is there as well. So I'm going to just step you through the mission statement and hopefully give you some insight, and I've sort of focused on marketing and communication aspects because that's what we're all here to talk about, I think, and just how that works, how it works for us in a practical sense. So in terms of building the best product, this is the core philosophy within the business. We make product, it's what we do. And one of the most responsible things we can do as a company is to make very high quality product that is built to last, is built to be repaired. Because the single most impactful thing any one of us can do as consumers of garments is just to keep them in use for longer, right? And so that practical reality of just having stuff that will last for longer sits really at the core of a lot of the things that we do. But there is also another reality with product quality. As you can see here, this chap's called Dylan Johnson. He's one of our alpine climbing ambassadors. It's a matter of life and death when you are pursuing sports at this level, right? And again, that sits right back into who we are and why we exist. And this man, Ramon Navarro, who's one of the biggest kind of big wave surfers in the world, he's here wearing a wetsuit, and for him this wetsuit is the tool of his trade, right? His surfboard and his wetsuit enable him to do his job. It has to perform, it can't fail him. But within this picture lies the kind of the dark secret of the surf industry, and that's a product called neoprene. And neoprene is nasty stuff, it's black stuff, it's extractive. It starts life under the ground, it comes out as oil, it's turned into a synthetic polymer. It uses tons of energy in the process of doing all of that. It is unrecyclable. It is the definition of a non-sustainable product. And for Patagonia, getting into the surf business and into the business of making wetsuits came with one precondition. And that precondition was we would get the surf industry out of neoprene. And that's where the second part of the mission statement comes in. Causing no unnecessary harm, which is a really awkward sentence. It sounds sort of intentionally avoiding committing to saying cause no harm, which is what people want it to say. But of course it can't say cause no harm, because it's impossible to cause no harm when you're making stuff. But you can cause the least amount of harm. And in the wetsuit story, knowing that we had to get out of neoprene meant that we had to crack a code that no one was even looking at. Nobody in the surf industry, the communities of surfers around the world, the surf media were saying, we really need to get shot of this neoprene stuff, it sucks. Nobody was asking that question. And so we had to start from ground zero and go on a 10-year R&D process to work out how to make high-quality performance wetsuits out of natural rubber, out of a material that we can grow in a renewable way rather than a material that we have to extract in a non-renewable way. And we succeeded. And in 2016 we flipped our entire wetsuit line from neoprene to a new and exciting bio-rubber alternative called Ulex. And it was an industry first. And the moment that we had cracked that code, we made that code available to the entire surf industry. Coming back to the point about how you scale great ideas, the best way you can scale great ideas is by giving them away. And that remains a fundamental part of how we think about innovation, certainly with a product. But another really cool outcome of changing the paradigm so radically in an industry like surfing is that we get to change the paradigm of communication. So the standard form of communication for the surfers in the room in the surf industry is to show people surfing radical waves and it's just the wallpaper of surfing. But to be able to run a print ad in a surf magazine talking to surfers and our community of surfers about why we changed the paradigm and how we did it is pretty radical, really disruptive and really successful. So the last part of the mission statement, and I'm going to go into a little bit of more detail on this one, I think, because I think there are a few more case studies that you guys are going to find interesting. It's another sort of long and quite unwieldy sentence. But the simple idea is using the business as a tool for good, both to inspire others, but also to implement solutions ourselves to the environmental crisis. And one of the things that we're really focused on within that context is aiding and educating civil society to be more able to make positive environmental impacts. And one of the tools that we use for that is a platform called Warmwear. And Warmwear is a clothing repair platform. It's quite simple. But it actually started out life as this. It started out life as Don't Buy This Jacket. That was really the very first iteration of Warmwear. And to explain that a little bit, Don't Buy This Jacket was not supposed to be a sort of a counterintuitive sort of marketing ploy to get people to pay attention to Patagonia. Don't buy this jacket is actually a really literal statement. It means don't buy this jacket if you don't need it. Right? The most impactful thing that you can do is to question yourself. Do I really need this jacket? Do I just want something in another colour? Can I repair what I already have? And if you answer those questions, then maybe you do need a jacket. And if you do need a jacket, make sure you buy one that's built to last, that can be repaired, etc., etc. Right? But a fundamental part of that philosophy is garment care. It's about this idea of not being a consumer, but actually being a custodian of the things that you own. Right? And the way to be a good custodian of the things that you own is to know how to look after it, to know how to repair it. And so it was a very simple idea, and really probably one of the sort of easiest and most natural things that we were able to do was to take that philosophy and turn it into action. You know, we know how to build clothes, and we've got lots of knowledge. We know how to repair them. We have repair facilities with incredibly talented seamstresses. And we have the ability to put those people in a van and send them out on the road and repair people's clothes. And repair people's clothes for free. And get them excited about the idea of looking after their clothes. And so we started the journey of Warmwear, and for us here in Europe that was in 2015, and from the moment that we launched Warmwear we've been out on the road repairing pretty much every day ever since. This year I think we've done about 250 repair events. We have 3 vehicles, they're on the road all the time. We repair any brands. And it's not a seasonal marketing campaign, it is a physical expression of a core business philosophy. And something else really exciting happens when you're out on the road every day, is you just meet lots of people. You know, people come and they sit down, and it takes a little while to have your gear repaired, and they hang out and they chat to us, our seamstresses, and they chat to us, and what you realise is people just love their gear, and they love to talk about the experiences that they've had in their gear. You know, these are really kind of powerful exchanges of knowledge and ideas. And we started to learn to capture those stories. Firstly, just with Polaroids and notes, and we started to just build a little catalogue. This guy is called Joe Malone, he's a skier from McGrath, and he'd shredded his jacket and told us the story of that, and in telling us the story of that, he told us the story of his life, and just really, really cool, interesting stuff. And as we progressed, we learned that some of these stories were so good that we wanted to kind of go back and grab them and tell them in more detail and share those stories back to our community. So I'm just going to share it.
Je m'appelle Fred, je vis ici dans les Landes, à Montliès, dans le sud-ouest de la France. J'ai choisi cet endroit parce que je suis un passionné de surf. Cela fait 30 ans que je me suis installé. J'aime le côté sauvage, le côté forêt, les étendues d'océan avec personne à l'eau. J'aime vraiment cet endroit. J'essaie de pouvoir être le plus autonome possible. Je trouve que l'on a moins d'impact en prenant par exemple une vieille voiture, en essayant de la réparer, de l'entretenir un petit peu, que de changer régulièrement tous les 2-3 ans. Mon Land Rover date de 88, ça fait 16 ans, 17 ans que je ne suis pas mécanicien ni quoi que ce soit, mais c'est jouissif de réussir à réparer son camion. Sur mes vêtements, c'est la même chose. J'ai une paire de boots, j'ai mis des patchs dessus pour essayer de la réparer. C'est tout un état d'esprit, une philosophie de vie quelque part.
Voilà, il est là le pantalon que j'ai depuis 16 ans et que je mets quasiment tous les jours l'hiver.
il correspond à un changement de saison dès que les matins sont un peu frais, que les migrateurs commencent à passer pendant ce moment. C'est synonyme, tiens, je sais que je vais avoir de bonnes sessions. En fait, c'est un pantalon en chinchilla polaire, donc très chaud et très compressible, très pratique pour mettre dans le sac pendant la session. Ici, on a remis de la polaire justement pour que ça vibre durant plus longtemps. Moi, je pense que c'est parti pour 10 autres années, là. Pour grande dame de ma femme, effectivement, et de ma fille, qui menace tous les ans de me le jeter à la période justement où je commence à le ressortir. C'est vraiment l'outil fonctionnel quelque part avant d'aller surfer. Comme j'aime bien regarder pendant des heures le line-up qui bouge en permanence parce qu'on est dans les Landes et les bords de sable bougent beaucoup. Voilà, j'aime bien avoir chaud et ce pantalon, j'avoue que avant d'aller à l'eau et après l'eau me comble pas. J'aime pas les choses qui sont éphémères, les phénomènes de mode, à proximité de l'océan et en vivant dans la forêt, tu n'as pas besoin d'avoir des vêtements fashion et de changer tout le temps. Voilà, juste besoin de quelque chose de pratique. J'aime beaucoup, je garde les choses aussi longtemps que je peux les garder. Avec ce pantalon, j'ai eu mes meilleures sessions de ma vie.
Cool. So that was a guy called Fred Kazanov, and really fascinating guy to talk to. And thanks for indulging in the 3-minute clip. We don't do much shorter than 3 minutes. Comes down to film. Yeah, just another quick thing that we do around Warmweth. We from time to time we pop up and sell previously used reconditioned gear. What happens is we end up getting a load of stuff coming back into our storage facility from customers that's damaged or whatever. And when we reach a kind of critical mass of products, we repair it, recondition it, pop up and sell it. And it's really successful, and it's actually a really great way of engaging with younger communities for whom the price point of new Patagonia gear is cost prohibitive. So we can get cheaper gear into the hands of young people and start kind of getting into interesting conversations with them. I'm going to quickly talk about 1% for the planet. It's another really important part of what we do. For those of you that don't know what 1% for the planet is, it is a pledge that we took in 2004. In fact, we were the founding partner of 1% for the planet to give away 1% of gross revenue of the company every year. So that's not post-tax or whatever, it's straight 1% off the top line. And it, of course, is becoming an increasingly powerful tool. And it's a powerful tool in a few different ways. You know, we often get asked the question about, you know, how do we square off the idea of growth with the idea of our mission? And one of the ways in which we navigate that is through 1% for the planet, is through the confident belief that the more impacts that we have as an organisation that makes products, the more impacts that we can have through our 1% for the planet programme. And that money, that 1%, is distributed to environmental grantees, NGOs around the world. Here in Europe we have around 130 grantees that we currently give to here in Amsterdam. In actual fact, I think we're at about 8 currently, right here in Amsterdam. I'm looking over there to the Patagonia guys to see if they can validate that. Yeah, so it's a really empowering platform. And in 2016, in the run-up to Black Friday, we were scratching our heads trying to work out, you know, what we wanted to do at that moment. Historically, we had done something quite significant. We've closed our stores. But Black Friday, anti-Black Friday, had become a bit of an arms race. You know, everybody's kind of racing to come up with the best anti-Black Friday idea. And we'd sort of given up hope about a week away from Black Friday, when a junior graphic designer in the web team in Global said, why don't we just stay open and give it all away for one day? And so he took that idea to his boss, and it went to the CMO, and the CMO went to the CEO, and the CEO went to the owner. And the owner said, how much is it going to cost? $2 or $4 million. And so he said yes. It ended up costing closer to $11 million. But that was, by that time, 5 days before Black Friday, and I got the email overnight saying this is what we're going to do on Black Friday. And so we turned that thing around, and it's called 100% for the Planet. Every channel, globally, one day. And what was really fascinating about that project is that of that 10-point-something million that we generated and gave away that day, 56% of the customers that came to shop with us were new. Yeah? New customers, new to file, as they say. But we don't just give money away, we actually kind of lean in and participate with our NGOs. This is an event in Bosnia that we did earlier this summer, and it's called Tools for Grassroots Conference, Tools for Grassroots Activists, and together with 70 of the NGOs that we support in Europe, some of our creative partners that we have, staff, we spent just a little under a week on this campsite working with those NGOs on tackling and solving some of the toughest fights, some of the toughest problems that they face. And it's fantastic, it's a really radical, kind of empowering experience. And it is mirrored by other things that we do, including environmental internships for staff who are able to go and help and support NGOs as part of a paid internship program here at Patagonia. And the reason that we chose Bosnia, very quickly, is Blue Heart. And Blue Heart is our most recent environmental campaign. And sometimes we recognise issues that our NGOs are tackling that are so significant and so urgent that we feel the need to really lean in and elevate what they're doing and really put the full might of Patagonia, Patagonia's global voice, to support what are often very, very small organisations on the ground fighting seemingly unwinnable fights. And here you have a map of a bunch of proposed dams, hydropower projects in the Balkan region, which would irreparably damage a network of the last fully wild, free-flowing rivers that we have left here in Europe. And the campaign's called Blue Heart. It's been running now since March, and our goal was to raise enough petitions to enable us to have a conversation with international financial institutions such as the EBRD and ask them to stop investing in the destruction of Europe's last wild rivers.
When you imagine a river, it's basically the same as a tree. The main trunk is the river, but you have the branches, all the tributaries. On the bottoms, the whole river system is under it.
No other energy source that destroys nature on such dimension as hydropower. These rivers are lifelines. All these communities, they would lose their basis and their existence.
Communities that are resisting, that are fighting against hydropower plants, are coming together, are helping each other.
Rivers have the power to unite. No matter what nation they are, no matter what religion, river is the same for everybody.
If there is a Europe, and we're connected, shouldn't there be something that we do not destroy?
Some shots of us handing off the 120,000 or so petitions to the EBRD headquarters in London, which happened in June.
Is there also like a step-in package or something that they can rent something and start to discover things, so that you don't have to make new products, but you can just borrow it or rent it with the stories of the old legends.
I think I'll steal that idea from you. That's we have the privilege of a really loyal customer base, which for some time meant actually an aging customer base. But in the last 5 years, that dynamic is changing. It's changing pretty massively. And we're certainly seeing a much larger proportion of our community being made up of millennials, specifically, and people who are coming into the conversation as, let's say, environmental crisis natives. They have not known anything other than environmental crisis. And people who are really passionate about outdoor sport. And finding ways for those guys to kind of be part of the conversation without having to step over the barrier of a €500 jacket, for example, is for sure a challenge, right? And that is why, for us, we really tend to focus on allowing our sport customers to find their way to the product that they need. And we don't really lean that hard into product marketing to say this is the thing that you have to have and you have to have it now. But we do try and focus on the idea that this is an open and democratic community and anyone can come in and join. And the great thing about activism and platforms like Patagonia Action Works is that we're going to be in a situation where people are participating in our brand and our movement, possibly without even owning our product, right? And that's a really great idea, isn't it?
I don't know if this is a question that has a straightforward answer, but maybe I would like to know, in your case and with your team and with the brand, where do you trace the line of causing no unnecessary harm? Because, for instance, in the case of what you were explaining with neoprene, you started doing surf apparel, and it took a while before you could switch to something that was more sustainable. Maybe how does Patagonia or your team decide, okay, well, it's good that we put research 10 years into this so that we can eventually change the material? I work in flowers and I have that kind of thing all the time, because we grow something that lasts a week and then it disappears.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, anybody here who works in or works with industries that make stuff will know that supply chains get more complex the further down you go. It's like a root of a tree, right? It just breaks up and then it goes, you get down past, you go back to the stitching and finishing, and then you go back there to the milling, and you go back there to the fabric production, and then it's the raw material extraction, and then the dyeing, but the dyeing goes down another route because there's another bunch of raw materials that you have to take down there, and every single step of that chain, there are water usage issues, energy usage, fair trade issues, shipping policy, the whole, is this being made in a part of the world that, is even safe to be in for people, And there is a point at which, you just can't go any further until you've worked out the bits before it. And so, really the approach with all of the things that we make is, first we build the very best product that we can possibly make for its intended end use. And then we work out how we can reduce the impact of making that product. And wetsuit is a really great example of that, right? And so, transitioning to Ulex was stage one. But then we wanted to make sure that we had the fairest possible supply chain. And so this fall, right now, fall 18, we've just transitioned the entire Ulex program to fair trade certified, right? And because all wetsuits are made in the same place, essentially, there's 2 factories in Vietnam where pretty much all wetsuits are made. It's a company called Shaco. Everybody gets it, right? We've done the fair trade process. All the other brands, all they have to do is put in their fair trade premium, and it's kind of job done, right? So that's another good little scaling idea for you. But yes, it's challenging and it's hard and it's never ending in that sense.